should see all 4 crew members
of the
make their way
undocking
inside the
that
Dragon
is
spacecraft
starting.
and
In
get
fact, this is
situated
India's
in their
space hero, all
seats.
set to return home. Shubhanshu Shukla's India's second
see
astronaut
2
in
of the
space and
4
the
there
first
now,
Indian
and
astronaut
the other
at
2
the
are
International
continuing to
Space
work
Station.
through
He
the
will return
procedures
tomorrow
to
in the
don or
afternoon,
put
but
on
his
their
journey
launch and entry
to get
suits.
back home is now beginning.
And there on your screen now, you can see Axiom-4 mission specialist Sławosz Uznański-Wisniewski. And closest to the camera there is the other Axiom-4 mission specialist, Tibor Kapu. So the 2 that are seated and already in their suits are Axiom-4 pilot Shubhanshu Shukla, and then next to him is the Axiom-4 commander, Peggy Woodson. And the crew will remain in those spacesuits through today's undocking and departure activities. And then following undocking and departure, and once Dragon is safely outside the approach ellipsoid, which is one of several safety zones set up to govern spacecraft arriving and departing the space station, the crew will be able to doff or remove their suits and settle in for the ride home. Again, that will be an approximately 22.5-hour journey before their splashdown tomorrow morning, July 15th, and the crew will then put their suits back on prior to deorbit and entry.
Still stationed on 2 for EDTA blood tubes.
With you on 2.
Good morning. There is the leftover blood tubes, unused, 6 of them, labeled Ax blood 10 mil EDTA. Do you have a stowage location for those? I wasn't sure if they were trash, if we're stowing them with us, or should if I float up and get them with Axiom?
And we are checking for a location.
Okay, thank you.
For those of you who are just joining us, you are currently seeing a live look inside the Dragon Gray spacecraft.
Back with you on 2. Those can be trashed in the current hardware JSB.
Happy trash, thanks.
You're currently seeing a live look inside the Dragon Gray spacecraft as the Axiom-4 crew prepares for their departure from the International Space Station later today. And we are awaiting the final crew ingress. 2 of the crew members already have their spacesuits on, and 2 of them are currently working through those procedures. After that is complete, we should have that final ingress followed by hatch closing, after which the process to depressurize the area between the Dragon hatch and the APAS hatch on station will begin. And then this will set us up for an undocking later today, currently planned for 6:05 a.m. Central, 7:05 a.m. Eastern. Ahead of today's departure, the Axiom-4 crew and the Expedition 73 crew aboard the space station took a few minutes to share some parting words during a farewell ceremony yesterday, July 13th. With that, let's go ahead and take a quick look at what the space station commander Takuya Onishi and Axiom-4 commander Peggy Woodson had to say.
Okay, so on the behalf of entire Expedition 73 crew, I would like to say a couple of words. So Peggy, TB, Shuks, and Swav, we really enjoyed your company, and thank you so much for bringing a lot of joy, excitement, inspiration, and other positive ways to make our experience here even better. And your dedication to science and your professionalism definitely marked a new standard for the private astronaut missions. And we hope that you guys enjoyed your time being here. And we also hope that the time you spent here will become unforgettable moments in their lives. So thank you so much. And now I will hand the microphone to Axiom-4 Commander Peggy Whitson.
Thanks, Tak. And we really enjoyed ourselves up here. It was an amazing experience. It's always great to work with a bunch of professionals, which you are, but it's even more special to work with folks that have become our friends even more deeply. And we really appreciate the fact that the camaraderie and the teaching that you guys offered to the crew was really exceptional. And we thank you.
2 and 1302. Did you mean 5102 and 1301?
Houston, maybe. It's been an early morning, and yes, I juxtapose those two numbers.
Okay, copy. Thank you. And finally, for 1001, we would like that actually in the EMER CTB 5511 in Node 2, Deck 2. And that's for the ammonia response medical kit.
Okay, copy. I will put the ammonia monster response medical kit in 5511, the 1.0 CTBs into the pantry if they're empty, and the 2 halves stay where they're at.
That's a good config. Thank you.
And there you just heard some communication between the Capcom or capsule communicator here in Mission Control Houston and NASA astronaut Anne McClain aboard the space station. With today's undocking and departure, the Axiom-4 crew with a splashdown tomorrow, July 15th, will have spent 20 days in space with 18 days docked to the space station. And AX-4 commander Peggy Whitson will have spent 695 total days in space across 5 flights, which will put her at the 7th on the all-time list for cumulative days in space.
Space station, and Shubhanshu Shukla, India's second astronaut in space and the first Indian astronaut at the International Space Station, is going to be returning to Earth tomorrow, and that's going to happen. Splashdown will take place at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Indian Standard Time. But this special farewell that has been held in order to mark the end of that journey, and during the stay, of course, there were multiple experiments that were conducted, 60 to be precise, and that splashdown, like we mentioned, will take place only tomorrow, but the undocking is starting today, and it's going to take some time before the undocking gets completed. And to know more details about what is it that we can expect, we have our in-house expert Pallab Bagla joining us. Pallab Bagla, after the undocking, the spacecraft will undergo departure and phasing. Take us through, that 3 phases that we need to know about before, the journey is complete and he returns back to
configuration of one of the internal space station
Well, what we can see on our screens is, in the foreground is Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, who's already seated inside the Grace capsule, a capsule which this crew named, and rest of the crew will board one by one. So the mission specialist will come in. The commander and the pilot of the Grace capsule are already seated. We can see Group Captain Shukla doing some final adjustment to the console units in front of him, and finally, when the other 2 crew members join them and a go-ahead happens, there is still a weather clearance which will come in roughly at about 3:35 p.m. India time, and that would be a go, no-go situation. And once that clearance is given and the crew are on board and ready, the Grace capsule will depart from the International Space Station on its almost day-long journey to splash down near the coast of California. Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla went to the International Space Station from the Kennedy Space Center on June 25th,
Crew
reached
11,
the space station
comprised of
on
NASA
June
astronauts
26th,
Zena
and
Cartman
since
and
then
Mike
he has
Fink,
been conducting scientific
along with
experiments
JAXA or
and
Japan
also
Aerospace Exploration
participating in
Agency
some
astronaut
outreach activities.
Kimiya Yui and
So right now you're
Roscosmos
seeing
cosmonaut Oleg Platonov will launch to
pre-undocking
the International
activities,
Space Station, currently
which
targeted no
essentially
earlier
is
than
that the
Thursday,
crew
July
has what is
31st.
called
And
ingressed
once
or
docked, the station
gone
population will
inside
again
the
increase to 11
Grace
people for just a
capsule,
few
and they
days
are
before
waiting
Crew
for
10, comprised
the
of NASA
procedures
astronauts
to
and
be
McLean and
completed,
Nicole Ayers,
and
along
finally
with
when the
JAXA
go-ahead is
astronaut
given,
Takuya
they will
Onishi and
depart from the
Roscosmos cosmonaut
International
Kirill
Space
Peskov
Station.
return
It's a
home to
very
complete their
carefully
mission. And
choreographed,
there on your
very
screen you can
long
see the crew
procedure,
portrait for Crew
because
11.
both the Grace Dragon and the International Space Station would be traveling at about 28,000 kilometers per hour, and the departure from the space
Again, there on
station
your screen,
has
you're
to be
seeing a live
very
look inside
gently
the
and
Dragon
slowly
Grace spacecraft.
undertaken.
This
All
was
of
the
this
first
is
flight of the
completely
Dragon Grace
automatic.
spacecraft. So
Once the
following launch
hatch is
and orbital
closed,
insertion of
everything is taken over
Axiom-4,
the
Peggy
computers,
Whitson unveiled
unless of course
the
something
new name of the
off
Dragon
nominal
spacecraft
happens. And if
as
off
Grace.
goes something off nominal, that is when the pilot comes into the picture, and the pilot for the Axiom-4 mission, which I sometimes call the Mission Akash Ganga, is Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla. So right now, what we see is Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla has taken his seat inside the Grace capsule. Commander Peggy Whitson is also inside the Grace capsule. The two mission specialists are helping the two astronauts who are already seated inside the Grace.
Pallab Bagla, let's just listen in to Shubhanshu Shukla, inside that spacecraft.
Conversation there about configuring the big loop. The big loop is a central communications loop for all teams supporting the operational activities today. So it's one central.
Dragon Houston on Space to Ground 2. Heads up, we are still in hardline audio config. Stand by for big loop audio config.
Dragon copy.
So it's one central loop that the International Space Station Flight Control Team, the SpaceX Flight Control Team in Hawthorne, California, as well as the International Space Station and the Dragon crew can communicate on during the undocking and departure activities. So the teams are currently working to configure that big loop and get it into a operational configuration to depart.
Go ahead on 2.
Yep, the hatch seal for the Dragon forward hatch has quite a bit of dust on it, so we're going to use the vacuum cleaner and clean it real quick. Just wanted to keep you guys up to date.
Copy, thank you.
And you just heard some additional communication as they work to prepare for today's hatch closing operations. Again, we are expecting hatch closing to take place in the next 15-20 minutes or so. The crew continuing to work through procedures to don or put on their spacesuits. And then once that takes place and all 4 Axiom Mission 4 crew members are seated, that hatch close will begin to take place, and that includes both the hatch on the Dragon side as well as the APAS hatch on the space station side. And NASA astronaut Nicole Ayers is on top aboard space station to assist with the Dragon and space station hatch close operations today, and then for undocking, NASA astronaut Anne McLean will be on top to monitor that from the space station.
Let's just get in Pallab Bagla in order to know more on this. And this is after 2.5 weeks. In fact, it's Shubhanshu Shukla along with 3 other astronauts coming back home, and that journey that's about to start. They're going to embark on that return journey. Pallab, take us through how long will that journey be? We believe it will be over 20 hours.
It's almost a day which this journey will last. Even though the space station is just 400 kilometers above Earth, but the journey from the space station to splashdown is a circuitous route, and it is very carefully a chosen path. So it's going to take close to 22 and a half hours for the Crew Dragon, once it leaves the International Space Station, to reach near California, where the splashdown will happen. And we still have close to 2 hours for the Crew Dragon to undock from the International Space Station. So it's the pre-undocking activities which we can see. We can see Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla in the foreground, already in his seat at the inside the Grace capsule, and the other two project specialists will join him shortly. So he is being kitted up to make sure that he is fully ready for the departure from the International Space Station. Group Captain Shukla did 7 India-specific experiments at the International Space Station and also did some outreach activities. There is still a 3:30 p.m. India time weather briefing, which would take a call whether it's a go or no go. That is what NASA has just announced. But right now, all preparations are on that the undock will happen as scheduled at 4:35 p.m. India time. So right now, all systems looking go, but a call still needs to be taken, and we can see Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla being held inside the Grace capsule.
And that undock command is scheduled to be sent.
Well, as we are expecting, fingers crossed. Of course, we did see multiple delays when it came to the takeoff in the first
audio
place.
configuration complete.
Oh, certainly. There were multiple delays before the liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket. In fact, the quarantine period for this crew is probably the longest at the Kennedy Space Center, which is about 30 days. Yes, but now that is all over. They went to the International Space Station safely. The Falcon 9 rocket performed. The Indian Space Research Organization intervened to make sure that the rocket was safe. And finally, they reached the International Space Station. And now what we are seeing is the beginning of the end of India's cosmic leap, which is Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla preparing to come back to Earth after his epic journey to the International Space Station, which has lasted close to his space journey would have lasted close to 3 weeks. It's a very interesting journey and a very important stepping stone for India's own human space program, the Gaganyaan program. So Group Captain Shukla getting kitted up and being readied inside the Grace capsule. We can see the mission specialist helping Commander Peggy Whitson with her being kitted up. And very soon, if all goes well, we will see Group Captain Shukla heading back to Earth.
Right, all eyes and all ears, as far as that journey is concerned. 2.5 weeks, Pallav, that, Shubhanshu Shukla and the crew has been at that International Space Station. But, before leaving for getting back home, he went on to say that even today's India looks ambitious, fearless, confident, full of pride. He went on to say, आज का भारत अभी भी सारे जहां से अच्छा दिखता है.
बिल्कुल, सारे जहां से अच्छा तो 1984 में Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma ne kaha tha, and that same phrase was echoed by Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla. Only thing he added was Bharat is Nidar, confident, Atma, and he went on to say many words which would really ring for a very long time. Essentially saying India today is more confident, and he is a test pilot from the Indian Air Force, so he also added that India is unafraid, which essentially, in my opinion, was an echo from Operation Sindoor, which also was ringing in his mind. So Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla gave some very reassuring words in his farewell speech before he left the International Space Station, to board the Grace capsule where he is sitting right now. So mission specialists have still to enter the Grace capsule after wearing their suits. It's still a long process. It takes a very steady and very graded process in which this whole exercise of departing from the International Space Station takes place. When the docking happened, docking was also a very slow and progressive step. The undock is also extremely choreographed. So this is a very important state because the International Space Station has cost over $150 billion, and you don't want a crash between a parting or a departing space vehicle and the International Space Station. So it's a very complex process, and it has been executed many times, and hopefully this time also it will go off like the automatic process it is expected to be.
Right. There was that celebration just before. Let's listen in.
3, Lyo card cage 4, and once we finish those steps, after reporting in, we will continue on the event details.
Again, we're continuing to hear some communications between the core or the crew operations resource engineer at the SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, and Axiom Mission 4 Commander Peggy Woodson as teams continue to work through today's hatch close operations in advance of the undocking later today. We did hear that they are go to proceed with those hatch close operations, and they're also working through some LiO or lithium hydroxide configuration. Those canisters work to scrub carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So again, continuing to work through the hatch close preparations in advance of today's undocking. That undock is scheduled for about 2 hours from now, with that physical separation planned to take place around 6:05 a.m. Central, 7:05 a.m. Eastern. After that physical separation, Dragon will execute depart burn 0, and then after that will be the second departure burn about 5 minutes later, which will move Dragon beyond the keep-out sphere. The keep-out sphere is an invisible 200-meter line centered on the space station and is one of several safety zones set up to govern spacecraft arriving and departing from the space station. Before moving into the keep-out sphere during arrival, spacecraft have to be configured to where they would not cross that imaginary boundary for at least 4 orbits, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering. After Dragon exits the keep-out sphere, the next milestone will take place about 13 minutes afterwards, and that is when Dragon will exit the approach ellipsoid. And the approach ellipsoid is another imaginary shape similar to the keep-out sphere, but this time it's a 3-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. One of the key differences with the approach ellipsoid is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe
Shubhanshu Shukla, there, the undocking that's going to start now, and it's going to be a process. In fact, it will only be completed by 4:35, and that's when the journey will begin. So there's a lot of steps that are involved, and Pallab Bagla here to take us through all those steps. Pallab, before all of this, Shubhanshu Shukla yesterday was seen enjoying that space feast before his homecoming, and that really reminds us of the armrest that he had taken, and there were other stuff that he had taken into space. So if you would like to remind our viewers of what all is it that he took from back home?
Oh, lovely. See, they had a feast at the International Space Station, not yesterday, but a couple of days ago. And Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla had earlier said that he was taking amras, moong dal halwa and gajar halwa with him. And he will share that with the astronauts. And when Prime Minister Narendra Modi had asked him, he said he had already shared it with the astronauts, and they had loved the Indian sweets which he had carried to the International Space Station. Alongside, he has also carried Rajma Chawal. He has also carried some Jaipuri mixed vegetables. All in all, he seems to have had a good time at the International Space Station while working very long hours. Astronauts keep a work schedule of close to 12 hours at the International Space Station. And Group Captain Shukla had initially said that he was having some issues with his sleep. and they always have, because they want to look out of the cupola, looking at the Earth below, which they do very often. So Group Captain Shukla shared the food which he had carried with him, which was, some of it was Indian cuisine, and a lot of it was the regular NASA food which is sent up to our astronauts. And they seem to have had a wonderful feast in the microgravity of the International Space Station, and that happened a couple of days ago. And Group Captain Shukla also had a farewell ceremony from the International Space Station yesterday, and he had some nice words to say to the Indian people, and he also spoke in Hindi. Maybe we can play whatever he said at the farewell ceremony at the International Space Station. Right now we can see Group Captain Shukla, who's inside the Grace capsule, getting kitted up and being readied up for his journey back home.